it's time for us to dive into the next session. This session is about cashew kernel market trends, opportunities, as well as updates. And to apprise you of this entire development and the trend, we already have the moderator of the session. Mr. Jim Fitzpatrick is already here with us on the stage. Also, our panelist, Mr. Marc Rosenblatt, is there. Apart from them, I'd like to start inviting people for this session. Inviting from Al Jameel International Company, Saudi Arabia, Mr. Bandar Okrin. Let's hear it for him, please. Inviting up next from RS Tinsley, Liverpool Limited, Mr. Robert Tinsley. Inviting up next from Valencia International, Ms. Sweta Jain. Okay, so Ms. Sweta Jain from Valencia International. Inviting from Simple Foods, Mr. Chen Wen. Welcome, sir. Inviting Mr. Abhijoy Das Gupta from Bandar Foods. Inviting up next from TNCPA, Mr. Ramakrishnan. And finally from Noom.com, Mr. Shripad Joshi. So I guess we have most of our panelists here except for Ms. Sweta Jain, who will join us as and when she walks in. And I hand over this session to Mr. Jim Fitzpatrick, who I think by the end of the conference will have to take a personal album of all his presentations since yesterday, all the photographs of him.
Everyone, we've got quite a big topic on our hands. We have 9 speakers, so we have 60 minutes. Usually they're covering about 88% of the market. So what we've seen in recent years is we have seen a COVID boom in certain markets in the United States, in Europe, and then a serious reversal in that, especially in the US last year. In the meantime, we saw the opposite in India. We saw a slowdown in consumption followed by a boom in 2022. So there's been a lot going on. It is quite difficult to get to grips with all of this, and we have a lot of talent on the stage here to help us do that. But I still see we're missing some panelists, if you can help us out with that. But let's start, and we're going to start in the Middle East. And we're going to start with Saudi Arabia. So if you would like to stand and join us, Mr. Bandar Okrin from Al Jameel International, please welcome him. He's going to talk to us about the Saudi market.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you to Cashew Information. Yes, I'm Bandar Okrin, CEO of Al Jameel International. We are based in Saudi Arabia and Emirates and Egypt and Turkey. I have some information to share with you. Yeah. So Saudi Arabia is population around 35 millions, and the country is now under a big program transformation for sensibility and for a lot of programs of the change in food trends and consumer. So in Saudi Arabia, the cashew market size in 2022 around 12,500 tons is coming 38% from India and 62% from Vietnam. And that is what changed last 3 years. Before it's coming to Saudi Arabia, from India around 70% and from Vietnam 30%. And last 3 years, every year, Vietnam's cashew is growing consumption in Saudi Arabia. And that is not consumer trend, that is a trader trend. So the consumer behavior trends in Saudi Arabia is 90% from the cashew is going like luxury snacks. It's not going like daily food or any daily ingredients. So the cashew is eating as snacks, as roasting, frying, okay? And 10% is going for sweets, Arabic sweets and different sweets like ingredients. So, and the snacks, 65% from the snacks is selling in the traditional way, and roasting also in the traditional way. Is the roasting is in oil frying, okay, and that is not helping. Last 5 years and 6 years, the market in Saudi Arabia, cashew consumption is not growing, is not increasing, because the traditional way and frying and selling. But now start under the programs of quality of the life in Saudi Arabia from government. Everyone start to look the benefits of the foods and the nuts especially. So in Saudi Arabia now, the people start to be the trend of quality and healthy. The market in Saudi Arabia for organic is 0% till now. But the new generation start to look now to the organic. Cashew is still not there, but I think the organic consumers will start to look the cashew organic this year and next year and year by year. I think in 5 years, maybe the organic cashew will be in Saudi Arabia, maybe 15 to 20%. So I will go to next slide. Yes. So what helped it in Saudi Arabia and cashew consumed is in 2022, the consumption is increased around 15% compared with other years. Because of Vietnamese cashew, it start to come to Saudi Arabia last 2 years, is is roasted, like grilled cashew, not as frying. And that is going to consumers, is like daily snacks. For me especially, I like to eat the cashew is not frying, is roasting. Because no one's want to go, no quality of recycling oil in the frying. So everyone's now looking to the roasted cashew as drying roasted is better than frying roasted. Like this, what we have is we have doing promotion in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so what we see now, I think in Saudi Arabia, the cashew consumption will increase 10 to 15% every year for next 4 to 5 years coming. Because of Saudi Arabia now is very open country. Consumers who have a knowledge, what is the benefits, what is the added value on the cashew for health, also start to come to Saudi Arabia. The governments and the consumers now more open and more trendy, and everyone's looking to the snacks, cashew, walnuts, and pistachio and almonds as added value to the health. And if we need to see the cashew in 12 months in Saudi Arabia, in Ramadan season is coming April. So in April, the consumption is increased like 25% compared with other months. So, and if you can say yes, Jan to March, then May to December is regular, stable quantity, but in April is 25%, the consumption is more. What we are looking and what we are saying, we need is to do the cooperate with the cashew information to showing the value, do some activity, social media and other media for Saudi Arabia, what is the benefit and how the use and consume the cashew in Saudi Arabia. Okay, and that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
So Saudi Arabia, a market for quality cashew kernels, growing quickly. Mr. Bandar Okrin, Al Jamil International, thank you very much indeed. We're going to move now to Europe, and we're going to move to the UK. And I'll ask Robert Tinsley, the Managing Director of RS Tinsley, a business sourcing cashew kernels in Asia, in Africa, and in Latin America, I believe you're telling me, Rob.
Okay, so the UK cashew market obviously is slightly different to Saudi Arabia. We're well established, so I'm going to focus a little bit more on the economy and how things have been developing over the last year or two, or maybe even the last 4 years, because we've had some other challenges to deal with. I think it's well documented in the media that the UK is under quite a lot of pressure at the moment. General food sales volumes have had a downward trend since the lifting of restrictions after COVID. The pre-Christmas volumes were down 2.9%. In recent months, the supermarkets have had a decline in volumes because of the increased cost of living. You've seen the same problems as in other countries in Europe with the high gas prices. In December, the CPIH for food was at 16.9%. This is just the general food inflation rate. So you can understand that the consumers are more focused on their staples rather than a luxury item that cashews are. But of course, the UK is very, very well established. There are people, we do have the daily snacking. It's not so much seen as a festival, nor it is part of people's daily routine. In January, consumer price inflation did actually fall. So we've peaked, we're coming down the other side. Hopefully, during the course of this year, that will continue to happen. But despite this, you know, I just got my gas bill. And my gas bill was 4 times larger than what it was last year. We're having to pay that now. So the consumers at the shop, the impact of the inflation, the impact of those fuel prices is going to be felt this summer. That's when people's pockets are going to be hurt. So I'm not overly positive for this year, but I would suggest that in 2024, you'll see the UK starting to come out the other side of things. Industry-wise, if we talk about the food industry in general, we're seeing a pushback from the supermarkets towards the roasters for 30 to 60 days at the moment due to the sluggish demand. If we focus on the main shareholder in the market, which is Tesco supermarket, they've actually seen a growth in their market share despite competition from German discounters due to a continuation of a project reset that they started in 2018. Basically what they're doing is moving towards more and more private label and taking more brands off the shelf. Private label in the UK, and I'll also touch on Europe, because even though we had Brexit, you can't talk about the UK without talking about Europe. Private label is about a 50% market share these days, and I can see that moving to 60-70% over the next couple of years. That private label is becoming private brand, so people identify with the supermarket's own brands. We look at the prices that we see for cashew kernels today. People would expect you're going to reduce the shelf price. I don't believe that will happen, not in the UK, because supermarkets don't want to be caught in a situation where they have to raise the prices in a couple of years. What we are seeing is promotions, lots of promotions. If you have loyalty cards for the supermarkets, which every household do, you're seeing discounts up to 30-40% on items. So that should be a good kickstarter for consumption. I'll briefly touch on the overall imports into the UK. Because we have had Brexit, and of course everyone felt COVID, we had an initial Brexit effect in 2018, moved into 2019, and you saw a Brexit overstocking and a COVID stocking. So you saw huge origin imports, a big increase. People didn't want to be caught out because a lot of product moves from Europe into the UK traditionally. It's roasted, salted, rebagged on the continent and then moved into the UK. So people brought more material in to make sure that they were in a good position. You can see that the EU exports in 2021 dropped significantly. Again, another Brexit effect. And that impacts on the amount of imports that the UK is going to make. A lot of people focus on import and exports, which we're doing here, but you can see the final figures in 2022. The UK net imports are down 10%. That is a reflection of how big the stocks are. Imports into a country do not equal consumption. And the stock levels have been really, really large in the UK, and we're still working through that. So the minus 10% at the end, that is not a reflection of how much demand is down. It's a reflection of the stocks that have built up over years. And it's a reflection of people readjusting to streamline their inventories. Because, of course, like everywhere, the cost of finance has gone up, the cost of warehousing has gone up, the cost of trucking has gone up, so people aren't prepared to just hold stock anymore. If we go country-wise, just to be a little bit more specific, of course, Vietnam is the main exporter to the UK. We are, as I said, predominantly private label, and so that has a cost impact. India, you can see the imports are going down. My real belief is that this is where Africa can have a big impact in the UK. There are a lot more private brands that are quality conscious. And for that raw consumption that we've had, it has always been about bringing in Indian kernels. Okay, it's not the biggest numbers in the world, but Africa can take that business. Some opportunities and challenges. Cashews now are placed in 4 sections in the supermarkets. You're in the fruit and vegetable section, you're in the world food section, you're in the bakery section, you're in the snacking section. So consumers have got a big chance to pick up cashews whenever they enter a supermarket in the UK. We're seeing more value lines in place due to the private label again. Our company opinion is that we'll see increased demand for splits and pieces this year because consumers are looking for a cheap snack. So if you want that cashew taste, you don't want to move to potato chips or popcorn. You still want that cashew taste. You can buy an essential line or a value range for as little as 73p. For 125 grams. So I believe in the cashew market that will lead to a closing of differentials on the broken grades with the whole grades, which hopefully gives processors a good opportunity to move off those items which would normally be seen as loss leaders. There's a change in consumer habits. There's a change in the way that we live. The traditional British pub, which I'm sure the stereotype is well known out there, it's a dying breed. We've got a population that is changing. There's late night coffee shops, dessert shops, you know, the type of consumption that you would see in the UAE of an evening, people enjoying a coffee, a tea, and they're starting to snack on nuts. So that's a really big opportunity for the UK market, especially in London-centric areas. With the ever-increasing quantity of natural consumption, quality is on the agenda. We're seeing more and more pushback from our customers against the lower qualities that we've seen coming into the country. And I believe, again, that that is where Africa can really, really step into the fold in the UK. In October 2022, the HFSS laws were initiated, and that stops the promotion of foods with high fat, salt and sugar. That means the supermarkets can't promote chocolate and candy and things like this. This is great for nut consumption. CSR regulations that you're seeing in Europe towards sustainability are going to have an effect in the UK. We don't work under the same laws, but anything that happens there will come across to the UK. And again, this is a big opportunity for Africa, because with the traceability and the sustainability, people are going to need it. It even goes back as far as relating to their banks. They have to keep the shareholders happy. And you can't get finance if you can't keep the shareholders happy. As I mentioned before, the decrease in Indian imports leaves a big opportunity for the more quality and socially conscious. And you know, just as a parting note for us, our business in terms of imports from Africa in 2023 is already double that of 2022. And we're targeting a minimum of 5,000 metric tons for the year, with a vision to move at least 50% of our volumes in the next 5 years towards Africa.
Thank you, Rob. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Rob Tinsley on the UK market. And he gives us an interesting insight into why lower commodity prices, if we want to put it that way, don't instantly turn into more demand. But he also leaves us with some optimistic notes on demand in the future. So let's move to the European market, and I will call on Sweta Jain from Valencia International, a company that needs little introduction in this company, who's going to talk to us about the European cashew market.
Hello, everyone. So moving on from Rob's presentation about the UK, I'm going to be talking about the entire Europe. But of course, before we do that, so just a quick introduction of Valency before we get started. Valency is an agro-commodity house headquartered in Singapore. We have offices across Asia and Africa. Well, let me just get this on. Cashew is one of our major products, along with many others. We have a very extensive reach in raw cashew nuts in Africa, and we produce our cashew nuts in Vietnam, Nigeria, India, and one upcoming in Ivory Coast. So going into the Europe market, over the 5 years, from 2018 to 2022, Europe's imports have increased over 4%. If you look at 2018 and 19, they're fairly consistent. Going into the COVID years, 2022 and 2021, you can see a lot of panic buying caused by the concerns of the supply chain, and so imports have kind of increased in these 2 years. And in 2022, again, we see the imports falling. You know, this is when we're coming out of COVID. We feel that this year was basically trying to manage all the overstocking situation that happened in the previous 2 years. Looking into the pricing a little bit over the last 3 years, again, in the COVID years of 2020 and 2021, we see W320 at 2.9, going up to 3.1, and all across 2022, we see it falling till 250 or 260 where we are today. So what really happened in 2022, let's dive in a little bit into that. In 2022, many things happened in Europe. Firstly, the war was quite a major effect on the imports. You see in February, there were lots of concerns of inflation, interest rates, which definitely impacted the imports. Going on to the currency, so there was a huge impact on the currency. It depreciated against the USD all the way till October when it hit its 5-year low, and this really made it very expensive for European importers to import cashew nuts. A good news was, of course, freight reduced in Q2 and Q3, so that kind of boosted the imports. But overall, the demand was reduced, primarily because of the overstocking in the previous years. Many buyers were seen, delaying their orders. Christmas and New Year's was not anticipated as good as it should have been. So, these were the kind of things that happened in 2022. And what do we see in terms of trends? So, Europe is a fragmented market with the leading imports from Netherlands, Italy, Germany, Spain, and France. Private label is a major industry in Europe. In terms of quality, we see a lot of focus on sustainability, on worker health and safety. This is becoming very important for Europe. And what do we see for 2023 in terms of prices, supply, demand? So supply, of course, it is pretty good. We've been hearing that throughout the conference. Demand, we believe it will be still impacted by the interest and inflation rates. However, having said that, price is historically at its bottom, so a downward movement could be unlikely at this point. Yeah. That's about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Sweta Jain on the European cashew kernel market. And the message I'm getting from that is that we can clearly see that the hangover and the disruption caused by the pandemic is still very much with us in Europe. And that comes across from Sweta and also from Rob. So let's move on. And one of the markets that we're all very curious about, and one of the markets with huge potential, is of course China. So I would like to invite Mr. Chen Wen to come and talk to us about the Chinese cashew kernel market. Mr. Chen is from the Symbol Food Company. When you're ready, sir.
I'd like to introduce China market to cashew industry here, because for the last several years of this COVID influence, so the market is really greatly changing a lot from the, especially before, China market mainly supplies through border trades. Because of the COVID, so the border being closed, and most of the border traders being influenced and being stopped. Symbol company, we never do any border trade. So we all buy through sea transportation. So we are, last several years, our proportion on the market not decreased, but increased actually. It's in this kind of bad situation, but it's one of the lucky things. And we can see the China market demands for in 2022. Actually the totally quantity is decreasing, but the pricing still also downward because the quarantine and the blockade of the cities and economy greatly influenced. Especially the unemployment rate is very high. So make the consumption power, the salaries decreasing, so the consumption power is really being influenced. Total nuts is, later I will talk about it, it's greatly decreasing. This is the cashew kernel import market, but mainly China is from Vietnam. It's really from Vietnam. But we see the Côte d'Ivoire proportion is a little bit coming up. But because the Vietnam market is very near to China, and also the border trade is a tradition, so the Vietnam business is still the biggest portion in China market. But in the future, maybe gradually, long-termly, Africa import will increasing because of the cost of Vietnam. We think will increase also the salary of Vietnam, the cost of Vietnam. Just now I heard Mr. said about the China may be the processor, But I think it's difficult actually because Chinese cost and salary is growing up greatly. It's really cannot come back to compete with Vietnam. It's very difficult because Vietnam cost is really good and Vietnam people hardworking. So the most probable trend, I think, will move to Africa instead of China. Yeah, China will be the consumption market mainly, and even the COVID 3 years, we see the cashew nuts and almonds consumption coming down, but astonishingly, macadamia consumption coming up, and coming up with big portion. So that means China is a very big population. So the consumption power is different. Poor people and the rich people is diversified, very different. So rich people continuously to need more better foods, delicious things, and the poor people more poor. So they are difficult to buy the general nuts. They for the daily consumption, not on snacks, but on the vegetables, like the daily oats, these kind of things. Cashew uses in China market, we are not only in snacks, but also China, one of the specialty is we cooking in the dishes and in the soup, used as soups. So it's one of the very interesting thing. Present situation of China consumption is because of COVID really not so good, but the totally mixed nuts, the totally consumption still growing year by year. So the cashew kernel demand in China market, we think will, totally speaking, will growing up, especially after the COVID, and the more usage and more kinds of products will be invented, and in the cashew milk, now China start consuming cashew milk and the cashew pastes. So totally, we think this year, because China, the stimulation of the economy, the M2 is increasing a lot. We think the economy and consumption will recover maybe more quickly than we expected. But anyway, because the unemployment is still there, so it needs some time to totally recover to the normal situation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we could describe that as a note of cautious optimism for the cashew market in China in the future. Let's move on, and we're going to come home, so to speak, to the UAE, and I'm going to advise Mr. Abhijoy Das Gupta to come and talk to us about the market here in the Emirates.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'm not going to take any help of the slides and move straight into what we're looking at in the local market. Now, UAE as a market is extremely different than overall markets we have discussed. We have 90 plus nationalities. In terms of cashew, we do retradings, processings, re-exports, imports. So all the data that you get from the Jebel Ali Free Zone or the Dubai Customs does not give you the reality of this market, because it's not a consumption market, it's also a retrading market, which means we retrade from here into the Gulf, into the Africa, into Europe. It's a zone where currency is managed well. So overall, it does not give you an idea. Overall, the market is around 7,000 metric tons of consumption. Now, with different nationalities comes different challenges. So overall, the consumption, we have Arab nationality, we have Indians, we have Asians, Europeans, all based out of this country, where 85% of the population are expats. Thanks to the government initiatives, inflation has been in control. But few things that we have majorly seen here. From a buyer perspective, I will first speak, and then from a consumer perspective. From a buyer perspective, I believe the cashew market is extremely misinformed. When I mean misinformed with other nuts, is we do have a lot of communication gap coming out of different sources of information, which definitely, because of the pricing that happens, because it passes through so many hands, of commission agents and everything, the misinformation for the buyer to take a decision is definitely something that is a challenge and has been a challenge for the last few years. Until and unless there is a collaborative board that comes into the picture, we need to come out of silos of countries and become a product brand. What has been done on almonds, what has been done on walnuts, what has been done on pistachios by the US government of setting up boards so that the communication structure to the buyers is clear needs to be done for this category. The next thing is extremely unregulated market. Products are bought from Vietnam, mixed into this market, combined with this origin, that origin. It's an unregulated market in terms of the quality parameters. So buyers are always apprehensive to buy. So they want to work with good brands. They want to commit their buying to partners who have been working with them for the last 10 years because experimentation in cashew market is extremely risky. And overall, another issue is domination. Domination by few countries in processing, domination by few countries in processing as well as in production. So the economics of the whole trade doesn't work out specifically for UAE because you want prices, it goes to Vietnam. You want processing, crisp, it goes to India. So by the time the African market comes into this, you are neither competitive, you're neither quality based, and because it's an unregulated market, it is a price conscious market. Now moving on from a consumer point of view, what we are looking at is we see raw consumption of cashew coming down in this market. It is slowly becoming more of a kitchen ingredient than a product that is consumed directly. We see it more as a cooking ingredient. People are using it for baking, beverages, somebody said cashew burgers, plant-based protein. So that it is becoming more of an ingredient than raw because that's how the trend is. Now why is it happening? Now what we as a brand that sells in the UAE with 50% plus market share, what do is we decommoditize the nuts. For us, we are not traders, we are consumers. So when we are consumers, as buyers and sellers, when we have such a support from the almond board of US or the walnut board from the US or the pistachio from Wonderful Pistachios and companies like it, they are heavily investing into marketing. They're heavily investing into communication that nuts is a plant-based protein. It is gonna change over and take over the meats and all of that. In cashew, we do not see. We have been seeing the same trend in cashew. It's a snacking category. We're going to oil fry it. We're going to roast fry it. And that has been the trend overall for the last 5 years. So slowly, when people think, what is a nut that is good for my health? The first thing that comes in is almond walnut because, okay, cashew is only for snacking. Cashew is something that is replacing popcorns during a movie in bars, as pointed out. It is not seen currently as a health. A lot of people are coming in and saying, guys, it's a high fat product. We want to go with almonds. It is not the reality of the situation, but because of the nuts market pricing coming down drastically on almond, pistachio and walnut, the US government, along with the Australian government and major boards have been able to invest in marketing to go into consumer and saying, almond is much better than cashew, pistachio is much better than cashew, walnuts is much better than cashew because there has been a strong trend of marketing into it by manufacturers as well as by the government, which I believe right now cashew is still trending on. We are a snack product, we are a oil roasted product, we can be roasted, but we still are a snack. And unfortunately what we are seeing, raw consumption of cashew coming down drastically. One of the major concerns that is there in UAE market and that we see coming out of mainly from Europe is MRLs. Pesticides is becoming a big issue in terms of this market here. There are concerns raised by Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, who are starting following a single GSO regulation, and the GSO regulation is aligning with the European regulation. So we are looking at a lot of rejections in terms of inbound goods, in terms of pesticide limits, and this is only gonna increase. So overall, specifically in terms of the understanding of this market, compliance will become a major factor. Coming to overall, as a processor, from our end, we do work with a lot of African cashews now. We have slowly moved towards African cashew. For a very specific reason is Vietnamese cashew for oil roasting and dry roasting. We do face a concern of breakages across the entire supply chain. By the time a packet of cashew reaches the shelf, consumers are still demanding that I want to see the cashew full. You know, I don't want to see breakages. I don't want to see that powder on the below the packets and all of that. African cashew also we have that same problem, but on the taste profile, it's much more crispier, and the handling, if managed well, gives us that kind of understanding. Now, the other thing, and I think it will be a major integration with Saudi Arabia opening up, with a lot of investment coming into the Middle East, we will see a lot of vertical integration happening, a lot of backward integration happening, which means companies who were traders will move into processing. Companies who were traders in this market will move into getting into farms into Africa, specifically with the inflow of funds with the currencies that is happening in the Middle East. So overall expectation is there will be a lot of vertical integration as well as backward integration. Basically trying to get the dependency out of Europe as well as India on cashew, because most of this imports that was coming in was from India as well as Vietnam moving into Europe. Middle East, there is a major push on food security after COVID, and there is a huge investment that is going on in this market on building in processing inside the country boundaries in Middle East, which means that companies which have the financial base, which believe me, a lot of company has because of the backup of the sovereign funds, they will be moving into vertical integrations forward as well as backward in terms of taking over crops and farms to moving into processing. So you will see the conventional trading methods going down in this market over the next 5 years, where they start taking control over their food securities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points. Mr. Abhijoy Das Gupta describes himself as a modern procurement specialist and a champion of modern procurement. There's a couple of wake-up calls for us in what he's been saying. He's talking about market information, the lack of, and perhaps the use of market information. He's been talking to us about changes in the structure of the market in the UAE. He's been talking to us about food safety, a global factor now, no longer something that's just found in Europe, for example. We need to listen to people when they talk about these subjects. This is the future. Thank you for bringing up those issues. So we're going to move on to the largest consuming market in the world, India. And I'm going to ask Mr. Ramakrishnan of Pratibha Cashew and the Tamil Nadu Cashew Processors and Exporters Association to talk to us about India. You're very welcome.
Hello friends, Vanakkam, good morning to all. First I like to thank our Indian exporter, processor, agriculture, farmers and the event organizer, Mr. Srivatsa sir and his teams for these opportunities given to me. Today I am going to talk about the Indian cashew markets and updates about that. Here, some of the things, the interesting things we are going to learn about that. Almost the global processed cashew market size was around 5,000 million in 2022. The compound annual growth is saying that 5.8% is on the increase stage. Compared to this, per capita consumption of cashew kernels in the world, it is 690 grams per person. But in India, 223 grams per person. Why I am specific here means, still India having more vacuum to fulfill this gap. So India definitely having the good future, and we tell that we still for next another 10 to 15 years, we will be the #1 consumer for the cashew products. Why? Some of the friends here told that after COVID, they got a negative in the business negatives. But in India, we have 50% growth in that. Because we promoting cashew as good benefits to all over the market. and we bringing this to all over the peoples and telling the benefits. We are celebrating the National Cashew Days. We take that opportunities and telling about the cashew benefits. I request all of them to have to celebrate the National Cashew Day on November 23. Still we can promote the cashews. This is one of my suggestions, please. And here I used to say, in India, we import almost 47% of the world production of the raw cashew nuts. Here, I again tell you that we are the biggest processor of cashew kernels in the world. And here we having some average price which were in the last 22, 180 and 210, this and also you know very well. And the top 6 countries we are importing of raw cashew nut to India is Ivory Coast almost 19.6%, Ghana 16.3%, Benin 13.5%, and Tanzania 8.6%, Guinea-Bissau 9.5%, and Senegal. Here, last year we had gradually increased around 63% of the raw cashew nuts imported to India, almost 13,80,256 metric ton, almost more than half of the world production of the raw cashew nuts. Here I am telling about the cashew nut production and processing in India. In India, we production almost 7,51,850 metric ton. Major states are Maharashtra, Andhra, Orissa, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, and others. Now, I am here to say about the major usages of cashews in India. Cashews in fuel industries. You know, we are having a cashew nut shell liquid factory in every state, and we are having a good market over there. And again, the cashews in snacks industries. Now, almost cashew consumption after a COVID, 50% grows in Indian markets. And even in the cashew is pharmaceutical industry also is cashew is now there. And in cashew apple, almost most of the product is getting waste in the cashew apple. So we make use opportunities that and make cashew fenny like guava, which in our already is using. So in every production country can use this cashew apple in the good consumption level. So agriculture also get more income on that. Now the innovation using in the cashew and its byproducts. Cashews is a vegan ingredients. You know, is a we are welfare to the animals and environment concern also. And dairy alternate products. Cashew based on the daily products are some of the best plant-based alternate to the conventional dairy products. Now we are in the pharmaceutical constitutes, cosmetic and bioactive compounds. So wherever we are taking the cashews into huge depth in our Indian markets. Now quality and food safety requirement of cashew in India. Quality still in the world there is no competitor for the India who can give the better quality than India. I am proud to say here. And packing, almost everybody is doing the same, then we can do that. And cartoon box inspection, the moisture maximum is 5%, it's reduced, wrongly mentioned 6. So I once again tell here that India is one of the biggest consumer as well as the processor, and very soon we are also in the production side in the cashew plantations. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Isn't India a complex market for cashew kernels? And it's been growing quickly. And it's the main driver of demand worldwide. Over 300,000 tons of consumption out of a global consumption of under 1 million tons. So from the biggest consumer to the biggest importing country, and I'd like to call on Marc Rosenblatt to talk to us about the US market. Marc, you're very welcome. Marc's from the Richard Franco Agency, in business since 1947, is it? Wow. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Jim. So, Sure, you've all had enough of me already. I'll try and keep this relatively brief. And much of what I'm going to say has already been said very eloquently about the European and UK market. I think we're pretty similar. So we've experienced some demand headwinds over the last few years. Part of it was we had a real boost during COVID. Nothing was better than cashews to put into your pantry if you were worried about a lockdown. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. It's a good source of protein. It lasts a long time. So we saw a big boost to that. And when people are stuck at home, they tended to eat a lot of snacks. It was there, so they ate a lot of it. We actually eat a lot more at home. Your friends come over, you put out some nuts to snack on than you do out, say, at a bar, at the movies. We eat some nuts out, but it's really a home snack. Inflation, as was mentioned by some others here, high prices of milk, eggs, petrol that squeezed out a luxury snack. Consumers had to cut something. That was the logical thing to cut. The war in Ukraine certainly hasn't helped that situation. The transit situation, so that caused prices to spike in the United States because of the high cost of transportation. And then when it came down, we all found that we had too much inventory. Essentially, transit times went from 3 months to 1 month, so everyone had 2 months more inventory on hand than they had anticipated. We've also had high retail prices that have yet to come down. I'll get into that a little bit. And obviously the high interest rates and now the softening dollar doesn't help that. So prices have gotten historically low because of some of these demand headwinds. The spike you see a few years ago, that's landed prices. That's in large part because of the increase in freight rates. Now we've seen prices come back down. We're hoping that's going to stimulate some more demand. However, there's a long lag time. It takes probably a year for a change in the FOB price at origin to be reflected on the retail shelves. If you think about it, a customer will often buy a contract for shipment over 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It then takes time for the product to get there. It sits in a warehouse. It has to get roasted and salted. It then sits on a retail shelf and then in your home before you consume it. So there's a really long lag. Things that happen on the FOB market take a while to really be seen by the consumer. And cashews are just not perceived as value at retail right now, especially as mentioned in this high inflationary environment. We've got, with the exception of pistachios, they're one of the more expensive nuts on the shelf. Almonds, mixed nuts, peanuts, now macadamias are all becoming cheaper options. And so when the consumer goes, they don't have a lot of money because they're spending so much on other products. Cashews have just not been seen as value. They actually went up in price by about 5% on the shelf last year. That was in large part due to rising labor costs and logistics costs within the United States. All the workers in the retail spaces had to get paid more. The sellers had no choice but to raise the price of the product on the shelf. So you can see they're not really a value on a retail level the same way you might see on an FOB price. So in summary, the market will change. We do think there's really good tailwinds on this product. We do think consumption is going to continue to grow strongly. It just may take some time. Unfortunately, during the difficult period, the friend from Benin before was saying, how can you buy RCN at these prices and then sell kernels and survive? Some won't. It's just a difficult period. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. And the companies that do survive are likely to see a very bright future. So until we get there, what do? Say just minimize undue risk. Realize this has been a difficult period and it may continue a little bit longer before things start to really get better. So let's try and minimize risk. Don't take on huge inventories without sales. Don't sell a lot of product without inventory. Try and be hedged. Try and just get through this as best you can. And trade with reliable partners. Reliable customers who have long reputations of honesty and integrity. Always customers who receive their product on time, who understand that you need good turnover, that working capital is expensive, who are going to take their product on time and not push their burdens onto you. And who pay you promptly, understanding that you need to go out and buy more raw material if you're a processor. And you need to support the RCN suppliers. So we need to keep the cash flow moving through the very long supply chain. And then who are the reliable suppliers? They're stable. They avoid major speculation and debt. They live to be there the next year. They're going to perform in every market. They're going to deliver on time and in specification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So there's some good advice and a super presentation on the US market. A couple of things occurred to me. Again, the pandemic casts a long shadow over business. Secondly, I was interested that Mark used the word value, that cashews are not perceived as value. And then we have to think about what is value. Is value just a cheap price? I don't think so. How do we present value? And that's, I think, food for thought for all of us when we talk about marketing cashew kernels. We're going to move now to our final presentation. Mr. Anıl Cinoğlu of Antique Nuts is going to talk to us about the market in Turkey. You're welcome.
Everyone, it's wonderful to see all these beautiful people from the cashew industry this morning. I'm Anıl. My company, Antique Nuts, is a manufacturer and an importer in Istanbul, Turkey. We have a factory and 2 retail stores and have been operating with cashew kernels in our market. So briefly, I just want to talk about what's going on in Turkey and a few of the challenges that we have faced with as an importer from Turkey. So our nation has actually traditionally always been a great market for nuts and dried fruits, though there are many Turkish origin items such as pistachios, hazelnuts, dried apricots in Turkey. There's also great demand for the imported products. So we see the people have always regarded nuts as one of their favorite snacks in the consumer trends in Turkey. So cashew has always been one of the favorite ones too. You can see here there's an increasing demand in Turkey for cashew. In especially 2021, we see a surge of around between 10,000 to 12,000 with a bit of a cool down in 2022. Right now in Turkey, cashew nuts is now one of the common snacks that you can find easily in a local supermarket or, just in a local nut shop. In our market though, cashew is mostly consumed either raw or processed. We don't see cashew being as a manufactured product too much just yet. Though we see some inventions, we see some products like cashew butter, and different flavored cashews, but right now I can say it's 95% raw or just oil fried or roasted. So the biggest supplier of turkey is Vietnam, and from there to a Turkish port, it takes around 45 days. As an importer, we have actually seen in the recent years that this duration of time can be critical in volatile market conditions when you're thinking of cashew. As an importer, we have observed instances when the kernel price has dropped more than our cost after the ship has arrived to one of the Turkish ports. So this made the life of importers and manufacturers, distributors in Turkey difficult, since they had to deal with extremely difficult cost calculations and sales policies. So the question is, are cheaper prices always good thing for a buyer in Turkey or maybe in the world in general? Well, we have observed that this isn't always the case. It's also reflected in these numbers right here. Most of the speakers right here also talk similarly that they have seen parallel numbers as of right here. Even if the prices of cashew kernels have become more tempting, the total imported cashew to Turkey has dropped down in a significant number. Well, to my opinion, there are two major causes behind this. The first and foremost is Turkey's economic condition. Because of rising inflation rates, we have witnessed major shifts in consumer habits as we have, like most other nations, are going through a bit of a tough time. And the value of the US dollar also has a big impact in the Turkish market. And please keep in mind, right now, as of today, importing cashew has a cost of the tax added around 90 cents per pound. So this is a significant number. When you go into a retail shop right now and buy a bag of cashew, 1 pound is around 15 US dollars, which is not a small number for a regular consumer in a tough economic conditions. And the second explanation is that after the kernel prices began to fall, the importers were careful about the amounts that they have booked, fearing that the price might fall down more. They were very cautious. So where does the cashew market go from here in Turkey? Well, considering the trajectory of kernel imports in Turkey during the previous 10 years, I believe it will have consistent demand. And Turkey will be one of the top 10 kernel importers in the world in the next upcoming 10 years. Well, for the time being though, we can only hope that Turkey, like the rest of the world, recovers economically and that people get back to their buying habits, spending more on cashews and filling their baskets with nuts. And after that, I strongly believe the market will flourish again. So thank you very much. I'm Anıl. If you have any questions about Turkey or the Turkish market in general, feel free to send me an email. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Anıl Cinoğlu of Antique Nuts. Thank you very much. So we've heard 8 informative, professional, and my compliments to you all, very well prepared presentations. Thank you very much. We've heard tough times, which I think we're all aware of. I think we've also heard that we shouldn't expect this to change soon or quickly. But their underlying fundamentals of demand are quite strong in all cases, and therefore we should expect that in time the cashew kernel market will improve in terms of its demand and trade. We also hear convergence of buyers' requirements across a range of markets. We heard food safety regularly mentioned from our 8 panelists. We heard concerns on CSR. But we also were allowed to understand a little bit better, or at least I was, the relationship between the wholesale or the import market and the retail market and consumers, and particularly how low prices don't necessarily lead to immediate changes and improvements in demand. However, listening to everyone, I remain optimistic on the future for cashew kernels. In the meantime, like we heard from Marc, we need to manage our risks, choose our customers carefully, and make sure we're not drawn into becoming part of other people's problems. Ladies and gentlemen, please show your appreciation for our 8 panelists, their excellent presentations, and their professional preparation. Thank you all very much. We're going to leave it at that. Under pressure of time, we won't take any questions, so we'll finish the panel. Thank you all very much indeed for your attention, for your good attendance, and for your interest in this most critical of subjects. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. Everyone, a huge round of applause to all the panelists for their most amazing presentations. Some amazing graphs were shared, a global overview coming across all the continents. With this, as we wind up, I request everyone to stay back in the hall just for the next couple of minutes. Immediately after felicitating all our panelists up here, we have a group photo coming up, and I'd urge each one of you to please be around to be a part of that picture. So ladies and gentlemen, starting with yet again the convention of presenting a memento to each one of our speakers, we start with our first speaker at this panel, Mr. Bandar Okrin. Let's hear it for him, please. Once again, requesting please stay back in the hall. A big thank you to Mr. Robert Tinsley. Requesting all the panelists to please stay back on the stage. Mr. Robert Tinsley, thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. I almost had a feeling listening to him that I was listening to a panelist on a CNBC business chat show. A big thank you to Ms. Sweta Jain for a very articulate presentation. Was very, very interesting to hear the numbers coming from Singapore. Thank you, Mr. Chen Wen, for your presentation, sir. Yes, Mr. Chen Wen, Symbol Foods. Let me hear you put your hands up. Let's see if we can send the applause till China, please. A big thank you to Mr. Abhijoy Das Gupta, Bayar Foods, Beira. Thank you, Mr. Ramakrishnan, for giving us the India perspective. And yes, we do celebrate the Cashew Day in India, and you will see on Instagram a lot of people posting about cashew on that particular day. Cashew has anyway been an integral part of Indian diet for millennium. Ladies and gentlemen, a big thank you to Mr. Marc Rosenblatt, yet again, the second presentation being as interesting. Finally, a big thank you to Mr. Anıl Cinoğlu of Antique Nuts, giving us a quick overview of Turkey and its relationship with cashew and where it stands presently. Requesting all the panelists, please stand up. May I ask you to please take a group picture. I'd like to invite Mr. Pulkit Jain from Bajsan DMC to please felicitate our very, very able moderator. Honestly, when you're somebody as veteran in the business as Jim Fitzpatrick, you really don't need any notes. You just know what to say off the cuff all the time. Let's make some noise, please, ladies and gentlemen. Jim Fitzpatrick. Thank you. Requesting everyone close up for a group picture, please. So ladies and gentlemen, right after this, I invite all of you all, please let's have a group picture. So ladies and gentlemen, we've got the beautifully lit screen. Finally, everything is in order. This is the time for you to use the stage while we break for a quick tea and coffee. A 15-minute break, 15 minutes is maximum. We've got just one more session to come up after this, which will be the concluding session. So requesting you all, please make use of the stage, get your group pictures done, and do remember, please use the hashtag WCC 2023. And as I told you yesterday as well, for all the ladies that were given the WCC stole last evening, drape them in something creative. Please tag us and you'll receive a very special gift from Eventel Global. Ladies and gentlemen, all the presentations from yesterday are already online on the WCC website. So anytime